My name is Taylor Dolanek, and I will be talking about private placement memorandums, offerings, term sheets, and due diligence. Starting off with private placement memorandums, they are kind of like a business plan. It has to be very researched and very detailed, and it can be very important to the company and could also be used as a guideline. It shows details in terms of investments, requirements, and disclosures. They also show financial statements, and it describes the business and provides background information on management and many other things that regard opportunities and risks. Reasons for private placement memorandums is that they add protection to the company. It gives entrepreneurs any opportunity to introduce any potential risks, and if anything bad were to happen to the company, what would happen. It also protects the owners from any investors trying to get more money than what they should from their investment. It's also important that it be looked at by an attorney to make sure that it complies with any laws and regulations. And it's also important to know that each deal has its own variables, and by that I mean it can either create huge profits or can fail. Pros and cons. The pros are that it can have high yields, it keeps investors private while they're trying to grow their own wealth, and it can be a great way to make connections with powerful people. Some of the cons include most trades do not perform as promised, could be a scam, might lead to investment fraud or identity theft, and sometimes it's required to have the money up front, which could be hard for people that don't have any money yet. When it comes to private placement offerings, they occur when companies make an offering of securities to individual or small groups of investors. They do not have to be registered with the Security and Exchange Commission, and it's also important to know that it's an inexpensive way for a small business to raise capital without going public. And with that, there are advantages and disadvantages of these offerings. Some of the advantages include that it's less expensive and less time consuming, and it makes it possible for investors to pick their own investment opportunities that may have the same goals or interests. And it can also make it easier for the company to set up their own transactions. Some of the disadvantages may be that it's hard for a business to find an investor that has the same goals, and that they also have to give up some of their equity. When it comes to the SEC in 1992, they eliminated many restrictions that make it a lot easier for small companies to raise capital. So when moving on to term sheets, it's an important part of the finance through a venture. It contains a lot of information about the company, where it could go, specific terms, and summaries of material terms and conditions of the offering, securities sold, management rights, and a lot more. Things that are important to have on a term sheet is valuation. I found out that a lot of investors want to know how much the company is worth. They also want to see where the company would be going. It's also important to discuss the amount of control if something were to happen to the company. State what the return on investment would be, just because it draws attention from investors. And it's also important to show that there is legal protection for your company. When it comes to due diligence, it is something that companies should do because it's to investigate and evaluate a business or person before actually going into business with them. And this is in order to satisfy a legal requirement when it comes to buying or selling something. Reasons for due diligence is that it's to confirm that a business is what they say they are, and it's also to identify anything that is wrong with a business or anything that could go wrong before you go into business with them. There are many different forms, and some of them include examining for potential merger or acquisition, and another one could be investigating or investigating by focusing on the future. It's also important to perform due diligence before going into business with anybody. It seems very time consuming and difficult, but it is very beneficial if a company were to do this. These are the things that I learned about private placement memorandums, offerings, term sheets, and due diligence. Thank you.